Ladies and gentlemen, some stories are written in comfort. But legends are carved by struggle. Joe Ranga's life is not a straight road paved with luck. It is a path shaped by hardship, pressure, and moments where giving up felt easier than standing up. Every scar, every failure, every silent night of doubt became a tool that carved him into who he is today. Struggle didn't break Joe Ranga, it built him. When the world questioned his worth, he questioned his limits. When doors closed, he didn't wait, he learned to build his own. Pain became his teacher, failure his training ground, and persistence his greatest weapon. Joe Ranga understood something most people never do. Struggle is not a sign that you're losing, it's proof that you're becoming. Each setback sharpened his focus. Each fall strengthened his resolve. Each obstacle revealed a deeper level of strength he didn't know he had. He didn't rise because the journey was easy. He rose because he refused to stay down. Today, Joe Ranga stands as a reminder that greatness is not born. It is carved, slowly, painfully, and deliberately by struggle. And if his story tells us anything, it's this. If you're struggling, you're not failing. You're being shaped. Struggle is often misunderstood. Most people see struggle as a sign of failure, a signal to stop, or proof that they are not meant for something greater. But in the journey of Joe Ranga, struggle was never an ending, it was the starting point of transformation. From the very beginning, nothing came easy. The path was uneven, filled with resistance, doubt, and moments where progress felt invisible. Yet this is exactly where greatness begins. Struggle exposes weakness, but more importantly, it reveals potential. Every challenge Joe Ranga faced demanded growth, mental, emotional, and physical. Without struggle, there would have been no pressure. And without pressure, there would have been no shaping. Struggle teaches lessons that comfort never can. It forces discipline when motivation fades. It builds patience when results take time. It strengthens belief when external validation is absent. Joe Ranga didn't grow despite struggle. He grew because of it. Each obstacle refined his mindset, making him tougher, sharper, and more focused than before. While others quit when the road became difficult, Joe Ranga stayed. He understood that struggle is not a wall meant to stop you, but a test meant to prepare you. The weight of adversity trained his resilience. The repetition of failure trained his consistency. The loneliness of the journey trained his self-belief. Struggle stripped away excuses and replaced them with responsibility. It demanded ownership of outcomes, courage in uncertainty, and faith in unseen progress. Over time, what once felt like punishment became purpose. What once felt unbearable became fuel. In Joe Ranga's journey, struggle was not a detour, it was the foundation. It laid the groundwork for strength, character, and inner power. It proved that greatness does not emerge from ease, but from endurance. And every step taken through struggle moved him closer to becoming who he was meant to be. Hardship is not gentle. It does not ask permission, and it does not offer comfort. It arrives uninvited and tests every part of who you are. In Joe Ranga's journey, hardship was not a single moment. It was a constant companion, shaping him day by day. Each difficulty carried weight. There were moments of exhaustion where effort felt unnoticed, moments of rejection where confidence was questioned, and moments of pressure where quitting seemed like relief. But instead of allowing hardship to harden his heart or weaken his resolve, Joe Ranga allowed it to shape his character. Strength was not built in moments of victory, it was built in moments of survival. When circumstances demanded more than he thought he could give, he discovered deeper reserves within himself. Physical strength came from repetition. Mental strength came from refusal to surrender. Emotional strength came from enduring disappointment without losing purpose. Discipline was born from hardship's demands. When motivation faded, discipline took its place. There was no room for excuses, only consistency. Daily effort, even when progress was slow, became a non-negotiable habit. Hardship forced structure, focus, and responsibility. It taught Joe Ranga that discipline is not about intensity, it is about commitment over time. Character emerged through choices made under pressure. When shortcuts tempted him, integrity held him steady. When bitterness threatened to take root, humility kept him grounded. Hardship revealed values, tested principles, and strengthened moral resolve. Joe Ranga didn't just learn how to succeed, he learned how to stand firm. Every setback sharpened self-awareness. Every struggle reinforced accountability. Over time, hardship transformed from an obstacle into a sculptor, chiseling away weakness and revealing resilience beneath. What remained was not just strength of ability but strength of identity. Hardship carved Joe Ranga into someone dependable under pressure, disciplined in action, and grounded in character, qualities that no comfort, shortcut, or easy path could ever produce. Closed doors are often the most discouraging moments in any journey. They arrive with rejection, silence, and the feeling of being unwanted or overlooked. For many, a closed door is a signal to stop trying. For Joe Ranga, every closed door became a challenge to think differently and move forward with greater determination. There were opportunities that never came, requests that were ignored, efforts that were dismissed without explanation. Each rejection carried frustration and self-doubt, but it also carried a question: what now? Instead of waiting for permission or validation, Joe Ranga chose action. He refused to let someone else's refusal define his future. When traditional paths were blocked, creativity took over. Joe Ranga learned to adapt, to innovate, and to build from what he had rather than complain about what he lacked. Closed doors forced independence. They demanded self-reliance and pushed him to trust his own vision. Instead of standing still, he moved sideways, forward, and sometimes uphill, anywhere progress was possible. Rejection strengthened resolve. Each no hardened his focus and clarified his purpose. The absence of opportunities became motivation to create opportunities. He stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing himself. Closed doors taught him that access is not always granted. It is often built through persistence and courage. These moments reshaped his mindset. He learned that obstacles are not always barriers. Sometimes they are redirections. When one way failed, another was designed. What seemed like loss turned into freedom. The freedom to define his own standards, build his own platforms, and walk a path aligned with his values. Through closed doors, Joe Ranga discovered that progress does not depend on approval. It depends on effort, belief, and the willingness to keep moving even when the way forward is unclear. Each door that shut behind him strengthened his ability to carve a new path ahead, guided by resilience rather than rejection. Failure has the power to define a person, either as a stopping point or as a lesson. In Joe Ranga's journey, failure was never accepted as a final verdict. It was treated as training, a necessary process that strengthened skill, mindset, and resilience. There were mistakes that cost time, effort, and confidence. Plans that did not work. Decisions that led to disappointment. Each failure carried frustration, but it also carried information. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Joe Ranga asked, "What is this teaching me?" That shift in thinking changed everything. Failure exposed weaknesses that success often hides. It revealed gaps in preparation, discipline, and strategy. Rather than denying those gaps, Joe Ranga studied them. He adjusted his approach, refined his habits, and returned stronger. Every failure became a feedback loop, an opportunity to improve rather than retreat. Training is repetitive, uncomfortable, and demanding, and failure worked the same way. Falling short forced endurance. Repeating effort after disappointment built mental toughness. Facing setbacks without losing self-belief strengthened emotional control. Each loss prepared him for pressure that success alone could never teach. Failure also removed fear. The more often Joe Ranga failed, the less power failure held over him. Fear of embarrassment, fear of judgment, fear of starting again, all began to fade. What remained was courage. The courage to try again, to take risks, and to move forward without guarantees. Through this process, failure became a tool rather than a threat. It sharpened awareness, deepened resilience, and strengthened confidence earned through experience. Joe Ranga learned that success is not the absence of failure, but the ability to learn, adapt, and persist through it. Talent can open doors, but it cannot keep them open under pressure. In Joe Ranga's journey, it became clear that mental resilience, not raw ability, was the true deciding factor. When conditions were uncertain and outcomes unpredictable, mindset determined whether progress continued or stopped. There were moments when talent alone was not enough. Skills failed under stress. Plans collapsed under pressure. In those moments, the mind became the battlefield. Doubt whispered questions. Fatigue clouded judgment. External opinions tested confidence. Joe Ranga learned that the ability to stay steady internally mattered more than any external advantage. Mental resilience was built through repetition of adversity. Facing pressure repeatedly trained emotional control. Setbacks strengthened patience. Prolonged struggle taught endurance. Instead of reacting impulsively, Joe Ranga learned to respond with clarity and intention. He learned to pause, assess, and move forward even when uncertainty remained. This resilience allowed consistency. While motivation came and went, mental strength kept effort alive. Discipline was maintained not because conditions were ideal, but because quitting was not an option. The mind was trained to focus on process rather than outcomes, effort rather than recognition. Mental resilience also protected purpose. Criticism, comparison, and isolation could have weakened belief, but resilience filtered noise and preserved direction. Joe Ranga understood that confidence is not loud, it is stable. It does not demand approval, it survives without it. Through mental resilience, setbacks lost their power to derail progress. Pressure became manageable. Fear became temporary. Talent provided potential, but resilience ensured longevity, allowing Joe Ranga to continue forward long after others with greater ability had stepped away. True growth is rarely visible. It does not announce itself and it does not wait for recognition. In Joe Ranga's journey, the most meaningful progress happened far from attention, praise, or applause. It happened in silence, where discipline was tested and commitment proved genuine. There were long periods with no audience and no acknowledgement. Effort went unnoticed. Results were slow. Doubt grew louder in the absence of external validation. Yet, this quiet phase became the most important stage of development. Without applause, Joe Ranga learned to rely on internal standards, not external approval. Silence demanded honesty. There was no one to impress and no image to protect. Every action reflected true intent. Progress depended entirely on personal accountability. Daily effort became a private agreement, honored without reward or recognition. This cultivated integrity, doing the work because it mattered, not because it was seen. Isolation strengthened focus. Without distractions, clarity improved. Goals became sharper. Weaknesses were confronted without excuse. The quiet allowed space for reflection, adjustment, and refinement. Growth became deliberate rather than rushed, rooted in patience rather than pressure. Silence also tested belief. When encouragement was absent and outcomes uncertain, faith had to be self-sustained. Joe Ranga learned that confidence built in silence is stronger than confidence built on applause. It does not fade when attention disappears. Through unseen effort and uncelebrated progress, foundations were laid. Skills matured. Mindset stabilized. Character solidified. What grew in silence prepared Joe Ranga to stand firm when attention eventually arrived, supported by substance rather than noise. Pain is unavoidable in any meaningful journey. What matters is what a person chooses to do with it. In Joe Ranga's path, pain was never wasted. Through persistence, it was transformed from a burden into a source of strength. There were moments when pain was physical, exhaustion, strain, and fatigue that tested endurance. There were moments when pain was emotional, disappointment, rejection, and isolation that tested belief. Instead of escaping these experiences, Joe Ranga faced them repeatedly. Persistence meant showing up even when recovery was incomplete and certainty was absent. Each act of persistence weakened pain's control. What once felt overwhelming gradually became manageable. The body adapted. The mind hardened. Emotional wounds turned into awareness rather than obstacles. Persistence rewired response, replacing avoidance with endurance and hesitation with action. Pain also clarified priorities. It stripped away distractions and exposed what truly mattered. When continuing became difficult, purpose became clearer. Persistence was no longer about proving something to others, it became about honoring commitment to self. This internal shift converted suffering into resolve. Through repeated effort, pain gained meaning. It became evidence of progress rather than punishment. Each step taken despite discomfort strengthened confidence earned through experience. Power grew not from avoiding pain but from moving forward through it. Persistence ensured that pain did not define limitations. Instead, it fueled growth, sharpened resilience, and reinforced identity. What once weakened began to empower, driven by the refusal to stop, retreat, or surrender. There comes a stage in every difficult journey where external belief disappears. Support fades, encouragement grows quiet, and doubt from others becomes louder than hope. In Joe Ranga's journey, this phase was unavoidable and transformative. When belief from the outside was absent, self-belief had to be constructed from within. There were moments when validation did not arrive. Effort was questioned. Progress was underestimated. Expectations from others were low, and confidence from the environment was non-existent. In these moments, belief could not be borrowed, it had to be earned internally. Joe Ranga learned to trust his vision even when it stood alone. Self-belief did not come from optimism, it came from evidence. Small wins, repeated effort, and consistent discipline slowly built confidence. Each day of showing up strengthened trust in his own ability to endure. Belief became rooted in action, not opinion. The more he followed through, the stronger that belief became. This internal confidence became unshakable because it was tested. Doubt did not disappear, it was confronted. Fear was not ignored, it was managed. When mistakes happened, belief adapted instead of collapsing. Joe Ranga learned that belief is not certainty of success, but certainty of continuation. Building self-belief in isolation also sharpened independence. Decisions were guided by values rather than approval. Direction came from clarity rather than comparison. This belief created stability, an inner anchor that remained firm regardless of external response. Through repeated moments of standing alone, Joe Ranga discovered that belief forged in solitude is stronger than belief supported by applause. It sustains effort, protects purpose, and allows forward movement even when no one else is watching or waiting. Challenges are often seen as walls, obstacles meant to stop progress. But in Joe Ranga's journey, every challenge was reframed as a stepping stone, an opportunity to rise higher rather than a barrier to halt him. This perspective transformed hardship from something to fear into something to leverage. Every challenge carried difficulty. Unexpected failures, limited resources, tight deadlines, and resistance from people or circumstances. Each could have discouraged him, yet Joe Ranga viewed them differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he asked, "What can I learn and use from this?" This simple shift turned problems into lessons and friction into fuel. Challenges tested adaptability. Plans often failed and routines were disrupted. Yet each obstacle demanded innovation. Joe Ranga learned to bend without breaking, to adjust strategies without losing vision, and to find opportunities hidden within difficulty. The harder the challenge, the more creative his solutions became. These stepping stones built resilience incrementally. Every time he overcame a problem, he strengthened skills, confidence, and mental fortitude. Challenges became a training ground, shaping the mindset necessary for larger victories. What seemed like setbacks became measured progress toward long-term growth. Challenges also cultivated patience and perspective. Not every problem could be solved instantly. Some required repeated effort, careful planning, and endurance. Joe Ranga learned that persistence in facing small challenges prepared him for the magnitude of future trials. Finally, challenges created momentum. Overcoming one difficulty gave the courage to face the next. Each step forward reinforced the belief that no obstacle was permanent. By using challenges as stepping stones rather than viewing them as impassable walls, Joe Ranga turned what could have been stopping points into the foundation for his rise, growth, and eventual mastery. Dreams are powerful, but without action they remain intangible. In Joe Ranga's journey, discipline became the bridge that connected ambition with achievement. It was the force that turned visions into results, plans into progress, and desire into tangible outcomes. Discipline demanded consistency when motivation wavered. There were days when energy was low, setbacks were heavy, and the comfort of inaction was tempting. Yet, Joe Ranga understood that relying solely on inspiration is fleeting. Discipline carried him forward when excitement faded, ensuring that effort did not depend on mood or circumstance. This consistency cultivated habits that compounded over time. Small actions, repeated daily, created momentum. Each discipline choice reinforced the next, turning once challenging tasks into second nature. Discipline allowed him to maintain focus on long-term goals, avoiding distractions and short-term gratifications that could derail progress. Moreover, discipline strengthened self-control. In the face of temptation, fatigue, or doubt, Joe Ranga exercised restraint. He learned to prioritize work over comfort, preparation over procrastination, and perseverance over surrender. These choices shaped character and created a foundation that supported sustained growth. Discipline also amplified resilience. When unexpected obstacles appeared, the habits and routines formed through disciplined effort provided stability. They offered a roadmap for navigating challenges and ensured that setbacks were temporary detours, not permanent derailments. Ultimately, discipline transformed potential into performance. It was the bridge that allowed Joe Ranga to take what existed in his mind, the goals, the dreams, the vision, and manifest it in the real world. Without discipline, talent and ambition alone would have remained untapped, but with it, he turned possibility into reality. Adversity is unpredictable. It comes in forms we do not expect, challenges our assumptions, and forces us to operate outside our comfort zones. In Joe Ranga's journey, adversity was not merely an obstacle, it was a teacher of adaptability and flexibility, shaping his ability to respond, adjust, and thrive in ever-changing circumstances. Every setback demanded a new approach. Plans that once seemed certain failed. Opportunities were fleeting or disguised as problems. Joe Ranga realized early that rigid thinking would only prolong struggle. Instead, he learned to remain fluid in strategy while steadfast in purpose. This balance of focus and flexibility became his secret weapon. Adaptability was forged through repeated exposure to challenges. When traditional paths were blocked, he explored alternatives. When resources were limited, he improvised. When outcomes deviated from expectations, he adjusted. Each situation became a lesson in resilience and problem-solving, teaching him to pivot without losing momentum. Flexibility also strengthened mental resilience. By accepting that change is inevitable, Joe Ranga reduced frustration and anxiety in the face of uncertainty. He learned to treat disruptions not as failures, but as invitations to innovate. This mindset turned unpredictability into opportunity and pressure into a catalyst for creativity. Through adversity, Joe Ranga developed the ability to anticipate, respond, and recover faster than most. Challenges no longer caught him off guard. They became training for decision-making under pressure. Each experience built a mental agility that allowed him to navigate complexity with confidence and clarity. Ultimately, adversity reshaped his perspective on control. Joe Ranga learned that he could not control every external factor, but he could control his response. By embracing adaptability and flexibility, he turned uncertainty from a source of fear into a source of strength, preparing him to thrive in situations where others might falter. A clear vision is like a compass in a storm. It provides direction when the path is uncertain and keeps momentum alive when distractions and doubt appear. For Joe Ranga, vision was not a vague idea or a fleeting dream. It was a defining force that guided every action, decision, and effort throughout his journey. Every step he took was aligned with a bigger purpose. When opportunities arose, he asked, "Does this move me closer to my vision?" When obstacles appeared, he asked, "How can this challenge shape the path forward?" This clarity of vision prevented wasted energy and kept him focused on what truly mattered, even when the journey was long and difficult. Vision provided motivation beyond immediate circumstances. There were times when the work was exhausting, results were slow, and recognition was absent. Yet, the clarity of where he wanted to go allowed Joe Ranga to endure. Vision became the inner driving force that kept him moving when short-term struggles threatened to derail progress. It also shaped strategy and decision-making. With a clear end goal in mind, Joe Ranga could prioritize actions that had meaningful impact. He avoided distractions, stayed disciplined, and invested time in activities that advanced his objectives. Every choice, no matter how small, was made through the lens of long-term purpose. Vision also inspired confidence. When doubt arose, whether from external criticism or internal uncertainty, his vision reminded him of the bigger picture. It anchored belief in his capabilities and reassured him that temporary setbacks were part of a larger journey. By consistently acting with vision, Joe Ranga ensured that effort was not random but purposeful, that struggle was not wasted, and that each challenge became a stepping stone toward something greater. Vision transformed daily action into meaningful progress, creating a roadmap for both personal growth and lasting impact. Consistency is the invisible force behind every lasting achievement. In Joe Ranga's journey, it was not bursts of effort or occasional inspiration that propelled him forward. It was steady, relentless action over time. Each day, no matter the challenges, he showed up, applied himself, and maintained focus on the long-term goal. This consistent effort created momentum that carried him through the most difficult periods. Consistency transformed small actions into significant results. Each day of practice, each repetition of discipline, each decision to continue when quitting seemed easier added up. What might have seemed minor in isolation compounded into noticeable growth over weeks, months, and years. Joe Ranga understood that results are not immediate. They are the product of persistent, repeated effort. This steady approach also reinforced habits and resilience. By consistently adhering to his routines, he minimized dependence on motivation, which is fleeting and unpredictable. Instead, he relied on habits shaped by action, creating a structure that carried him even when energy and enthusiasm waned. Momentum built quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it became unstoppable. Consistency also strengthened confidence. The more he repeated positive actions, the more proof he had of his capability. Each step forward reinforced belief in himself, creating an inner assurance that no external validation could match. Over time, persistence became a self-fulfilling cycle. Consistent effort led to visible progress, which reinforced further consistency. Moreover, consistency allowed Joe Ranga to weather setbacks with less disruption. Momentum did not rely on flawless performance. It relied on maintaining forward motion even through mistakes, failures, and obstacles. Each return to effort after a setback became easier, smoother, and more purposeful. Through relentless consistency, Joe Ranga turned ordinary effort into extraordinary outcomes. What others may have viewed as struggle, repetition, or routine became the engine of his growth, influence, and eventual success, proving that steady progress often outweighs sporadic brilliance. Mistakes are inevitable, but how one responds to them separates growth from stagnation. In Joe Ranga's journey, mistakes were not feared or hidden. They were embraced as essential lessons that fueled continuous improvement. Every misstep, whether minor or major, became an opportunity to analyze, adapt, and refine his approach. When a plan failed or an effort fell short, Joe Ranga resisted the urge to blame circumstances or others. Instead, he examined the situation with honesty, asking, "What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this?" This introspection transformed failure into a roadmap for skill development, decision-making, and strategic thinking. Mistakes sharpened problem-solving skills. By confronting errors directly, Joe Ranga learned to anticipate challenges, think critically, and develop solutions before similar problems arose again. Each mistake acted as a guidepost, pointing to areas that required attention, improvement, or innovation. Beyond skill development, mistakes strengthened character. They tested humility, patience, and accountability. Joe Ranga learned to accept responsibility without becoming discouraged, to persevere without pride, and to adjust without compromising his vision. This emotional growth was as important as the practical lessons gained from each error. Mistakes also encouraged experimentation. By reframing missteps as feedback rather than failure, Joe Ranga became more willing to take calculated risks. He learned to test new strategies, step out of comfort zones, and explore uncharted paths, knowing that errors would provide valuable insight rather than punishment. Through this continuous loop of action, reflection, and adaptation, mistakes became fuel for progress rather than obstacles. Each lesson learned reinforced resilience, sharpened judgment, and enhanced the ability to respond effectively in future situations. Joe Ranga's commitment to learning from mistakes ensured that his journey was not just about avoiding failure, but about growing stronger because of it. Patience is often overlooked in a world that celebrates speed and instant results, but in Joe Ranga's journey, it became an essential quality that allowed him to convert struggle into lasting progress. True growth does not happen overnight. It is a slow, deliberate process, and patience provided the mental and emotional framework to endure it. There were countless moments when results were delayed, despite effort, discipline, and vision. In those moments, frustration could have easily taken hold. Yet Joe Ranga understood that progress is rarely linear. He learned to trust the process, to focus on daily actions, and to measure success not solely by immediate outcomes but by long-term trajectory. Patience strengthened resilience. It allowed him to continue showing up even when the work felt repetitive, monotonous, or unrewarding. Each small, consistent step added up over time, creating momentum that was invisible to others but transformative internally. Patience ensured that temporary setbacks did not derail the journey or shake belief in eventual success. It also fostered clarity. By slowing down and allowing experiences to unfold naturally, Joe Ranga could assess challenges more objectively, make informed decisions, and avoid impulsive actions that could lead to unnecessary mistakes. Patience allowed him to see patterns, understand consequences, and plan strategically rather than react emotionally. Moreover, patience cultivated emotional intelligence. Enduring struggle without immediate reward required self-control, humility, and acceptance of uncertainty. Joe Ranga learned to regulate frustration, maintain composure under pressure, and approach difficulties with a steady mindset, turning obstacles into opportunities for growth. Through patience, struggle transformed from a source of stress into a teacher of discipline, endurance, and perspective. Each delayed result became a lesson in persistence, each challenge a test of focus, and each moment of waiting a chance to strengthen resolve. Patience made progress sustainable, ensuring that the growth achieved was not fleeting, but enduring and capable of supporting even greater achievements in the future. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that can hold people back, and in Joe Ranga's journey, it was ever present. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, each had the potential to stop progress in its tracks. But what distinguished Joe Ranga was his ability to act in spite of fear, using courage as the engine to move forward when hesitation could have been easier. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was the deliberate choice to confront it. Every time a new challenge appeared, every time a high-stakes decision had to be made, fear naturally arose. Yet Joe Ranga did not let it dictate his actions. He acknowledged fear, analyzed the risks, and then acted anyway. Each courageous decision reinforced his ability to persevere under pressure. This courage was developed through repeated exposure to difficult situations. Early failures, setbacks, and criticisms became opportunities to practice bravery. With each step into discomfort, he strengthened the mental muscle needed to face even greater challenges. Courage became a habit, not an occasional burst of boldness. Courage also fueled innovation. By acting despite fear, Joe Ranga allowed himself to explore new ideas, take risks, and venture into untested paths. Fear often limits thinking and confines people to familiar patterns, but courage breaks those boundaries. It enabled him to create opportunities instead of waiting for them to appear. Furthermore, courage inspired confidence in others. By consistently choosing action over avoidance, Joe Ranga set an example that resilience and initiative are possible, even in daunting circumstances. His courage became contagious, motivating those around him to challenge their own fears. Ultimately, courage transformed fear from a paralyzing force into a driving force for growth. It allowed Joe Ranga to take decisive action, maintain momentum during uncertainty, and consistently advance toward his goals despite the inevitable risks and unknowns that life presented. Joe Ranga's journey teaches us that greatness is not given. It is earned through struggle, shaped by persistence, and defined by resilience. Every hardship he faced, every failure he endured, and every obstacle he overcame was a chisel, sculpting him into the remarkable person he is today. His story is a reminder that struggle is not a sign of weakness, but a proof of growth. Pain, setbacks, and challenges are not detours. They are the very tools that carve strength, character, and vision. What others may see as impossible, Joe Ranga transformed into opportunity. What others may abandon, he persisted through, fueled by courage, discipline, and unwavering self-belief. The legacy of Joe Ranga is not just his achievements, it is the inspiration his journey leaves behind. It shows that every struggle can be a stepping stone, every failure a lesson, and every challenge a platform for transformation. So, let us take his story to heart. Let us remember that our struggles do not define us, they refine us. Like Joe Ranga, we too can rise, endure, and create a life that is not only successful but legendary. In the end, greatness is carved by struggle, strengthened by persistence, and celebrated through the courage to rise again and again.